Life has a strange way of shifting when you least expect it. That night, sitting alone in a small, dimly lit hotel room, I remember thinking how unpredictable everything had become. Just a few hours earlier, I had been on a simple trip, one that was supposed to be routine, almost forgettable. But instead, it turned into something far more complicated, something that would stay with me long after. My husband Logan had been away for months. Work, he said, responsibilities, important things that always seemed to come before me. At first I understood. I supported him. That's what a good wife does, right? But over time, the distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The calls became shorter, the messages less frequent. His voice, once warm and familiar, started to feel distant. Almost like I was speaking to a stranger. Loneliness has a way of creeping in quietly. It doesn't arrive with noise or warning. It settles in slowly, through silent dinners, empty rooms, and nights that feel far too long. And those nights, they were the hardest. That morning started like any other. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my hair, studying my reflection for a moment longer than usual. There was something in my eyes I didn't recognize anymore. Tired, maybe, or restless. But still, there was something else too. A spark. "I'm still me," I whispered quietly to my reflection, as if I needed to remind myself, even after everything, I wasn't invisible. Gary was in the kitchen when I walked in. He was finishing breakfast, scrolling through his phone, completely relaxed like always. That was Gary, carefree, a little mischievous, always living in his own world. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorway. He looked up, flashing that familiar half-smile. "Morning. I need a favor," I told him. He raised an eyebrow. "That already sounds dangerous." I sighed lightly. "I want to visit my father. It's been a while. And I need a ride." Gary leaned back in his chair, pretending to think dramatically. I don't know. That's a long drive." "Gary," I said firmly. All right," he laughed. "I'll take you. But on one condition." I crossed my arms. "What now?" "Tell Dad I deserve a better car." I rolled my eyes, but a small smile slipped through. "We'll talk about it." The drive started off simple enough. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the sun high in the sky. I sat quietly, occasionally checking my phone, though there wasn't much to check. Gary, on the other hand, filled the silence with random songs, jokes, and commentary about everything he saw. "Did you see that sign?" he said at one point. "What sign?" I asked, barely looking up. "Exactly. That's the problem. You never notice the interesting things." I shook my head. "Maybe because I'm not as easily entertained as you." He laughed. "You should try it sometime." 2 hours into the drive, everything changed. It started with a strange noise, sharp and sudden. Then silence. The car slowed and stopped. "What just happened?" I asked, sitting upright. Gary frowned, trying to restart the engine. "Nothing. I think—" He paused, exhaling in frustration. "The car's dead." I stared out the window. There was nothing around us. No buildings, no people. Just an empty road stretching into nowhere. "You've got to be kidding me." The next 2 hours felt endless. We tried everything, calls, messages, even checking the engine. Though neither of us really knew what we were doing. Signal was weak. Help was far. Frustration grew quickly. "This is your fault," I muttered at one point. "My fault?" Gary shot back. "I didn't build the car. You were driving it, and you were sitting in it." We both went quiet after that. Arguing wasn't going to fix anything. Eventually, we had no choice. The nearest motel was miles away, but it was the only option. By the time we reached it, I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Gary handled the reception while I stood behind him, arms crossed, trying to process everything. If Logan found out? The thought crossed my mind, but strangely, it didn't carry the same weight it once would have. That scared me more than anything. The room was disappointing. Small, cramped, barely enough space to move around. A single bed, a flickering light, an old air conditioner that struggled against the heat. "This is it?" I said quietly. Gary shrugged, dropping his bag. "What did you expect? A luxury suite?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Just something better." "It's one night," he said casually. "We'll survive." I tried to ignore the discomfort, the heat, the space, the situation. But there was something else too, something I couldn't quite explain. Being there, alone with Gary, it created a strange tension in the air. Not obvious, not spoken, but present. I need a shower, I said finally. This heat is unbearable. Go ahead, Gary replied, lying back on the bed. Make yourself at home. I glanced at him briefly before heading into the bathroom. The cool water helped. For a moment, everything felt quieter, simpler. But my thoughts, they didn't stop. Logan, the distance, the loneliness, and now, this unexpected situation. I just needed a break, I whispered to myself. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. When I stepped out, the room felt even smaller than before. Gary was still there, relaxed, completely at ease, as if nothing about this situation bothered him. I envied that. Later that evening, I decided to go downstairs for dinner. I needed space, time to think. The restaurant was quiet, dimly lit, almost peaceful. I ordered something light along with a glass of wine. As I sat there, my thoughts drifted again. Back to the room, back to Gary, back to everything I had been trying to ignore. By the time I returned, the night had fully settled. The hallway was silent. The air felt heavier. I opened the door slowly. The room was quiet. Gary was already asleep. For a moment, I just stood there, watching, not thinking, just observing. The situation felt surreal, unexpected, complicated, and somehow important. I sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake him. This is just one night, I told myself quietly. But something deep inside me whispered otherwise. That night, everything began to change. The next morning didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like a continuation of something unfinished, something heavy. I woke up slowly, the dull light of morning slipping through the thin curtains. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember where I was, and why everything felt so different. Then it hit me. The motel, the broken car, the night, and Gary. My heart tightened instantly. I turned my head slightly. He wasn't on the bed. For a brief moment, I felt an unexpected emptiness, quick, sharp, and confusing. But before I could even process it, I heard movement outside. The door opened. Gary stepped in. "You're awake," he said, his voice calm. Almost too calm. I sat up slowly, pulling the sheet closer around me, as if it could somehow shield me from everything I was feeling. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to sound normal. "Fixing the car," he replied, running a hand through his hair. "Found a mechanic a few miles from here. It took some time, but it's done." I nodded. "Good," I said quietly. Silence followed. Not the comfortable kind. This was different. Thick, awkward, filled with everything we weren't saying. I avoided his eyes. Not because I didn't want to look, but because I wasn't sure what I'd see if I did. Or worse, what he'd see in mine. "Carmen." His voice was softer now. "Careful." I looked up just for a second. That was a mistake. There was something in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Not just confidence or playfulness like usual, but something deeper, more serious, more real. "We should get ready," he added quickly, as if pulling himself back. "We need to pick up Dad." That word hit differently now. Dad. Logan. Reality. The drive back was quiet. Too quiet. The same road we had taken yesterday now felt completely different. The sunlight was the same. The landscape hadn't changed. But I sat in the passenger seat this time. Gary drove, focused on the road, both hands on the wheel. No music, no jokes, no random commentary, just silence. A few times I caught myself glancing at him, and every time I did, I quickly looked away. It was strange. Just yesterday, everything about him had felt normal, familiar. Now, everything felt amplified. The way he held the steering wheel, the way his jaw tightened when he was thinking. Even the silence between us felt charged. "Are you okay?" he asked suddenly. His eyes stayed on the road. "Yeah," I replied too quickly. Another pause. Then he exhaled quietly. "You don't have to pretend." I swallowed. "I'm not pretending." This time he glanced at me, just briefly. "That's exactly what it looks like." I turned toward the window. Fields passed by in a blur. "I just don't know what to say," I admitted finally. "Then don't say anything," he replied. "But that doesn't change anything, does it?" I whispered. He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. No matter how silent we stayed, what happened wasn't something we could just erase. A few hours later, we reached the city. Everything felt normal again on the surface. Traffic, Noise, people moving around like nothing had changed. But inside me, nothing felt normal. We stopped outside the building where Logan was staying. Gary turned off the engine. For a moment, neither of us moved. "This is it," he said quietly. I nodded, but my hands felt cold. "What happens now?" I asked without thinking. He looked at me. This time, he didn't look away. "We act like nothing happened," he said. His tone was steady, but something in it wasn't. Logan came out a few minutes later. The moment I saw him, a wave of emotions hit me all at once. Relief, guilt, confusion. He smiled when he saw us. "Hey," he said, opening the back door and getting in. "You made it." I forced a smile. "Of course." He leaned forward slightly. "Sorry you had to come all this way. Work's been crazy." I nodded again. "It's okay." But it wasn't. As Gary started driving again, Logan kept talking about work, about meetings, about things that suddenly felt so distant and unimportant. I responded when I had to. But my mind was somewhere else. Every now and then I felt it. That silent awareness, that unspoken connection. Gary didn't say anything. Neither did I. But it was there, between us, constant, unavoidable. That night, we checked into another hotel. A better one this time. 2 separate rooms. Normal, appropriate, safe. At least, that's how it should have felt. But when I entered my room and closed the door behind me, the silence returned. And with it, everything I had been trying to push away. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. "What have I done?" I whispered. The question hung in the air, heavy, unanswered. A part of me felt guilt, deep, undeniable guilt. Logan trusted me. He had no idea. And that truth, it hurt. But there was another part, too. Quieter, more dangerous. A part that wasn't just filled with regret. A part that remembered the intensity, the connection, the way everything had felt so real in that moment. I stood up quickly, shaking my head. "No," I said firmly. "This has to stop." I walked toward the window, looking out at the city lights. "I'm better than this." But even as I said it, I wasn't entirely sure if I believed it. A soft knock on the door broke my thoughts. My heart skipped. I knew who it was. For a moment, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the handle. This was a choice, a moment, a line that could still be drawn. I closed my eyes briefly, took a deep breath, and then I opened the door. Gary stood there, silent, waiting. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't over, not even close. The moment I opened the door, everything seemed to stand still. Gary stood there, just a few steps away, his expression unreadable, caught somewhere between hesitation and certainty. The hallway light cast a soft glow behind him, outlining his figure but leaving his eyes in shadow. Neither of us spoke. For a few seconds, the world felt suspended, like time itself was waiting for one of us to decide what came next. "Can I come in?" he finally asked. His voice was low, careful. I should have said no. I knew that. Every rational thought in my mind screamed it. But something deeper, something far more complicated, held me in place. I stepped aside. He walked in. And just like that, the line we had been trying to ignore became even harder to see. The door clicked shut behind him. That small sound echoed louder than it should have. I turned around slowly, crossing my arms, not out of confidence, but to steady myself. "We shouldn't be doing this," I said. It came out softer than I intended. Gary didn't move closer this time. He stayed where he was, giving me space, but not distance. "I know," he replied. That surprised me. I looked up at him. "Then why are you here?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, searching for the right words. "Because pretending nothing happened doesn't make it true." Silence settled between us again. But this time it wasn't awkward. It was honest, raw. "I've been thinking about it all day," he continued. "About last night, about us, about everything." My heart started racing again. I didn't want to hear this, and yet I couldn't stop listening. "This isn't just something random," he said. "At least, it doesn't feel like it to me." His words landed heavily, because deep down, I felt it too. That's what made it dangerous. "Gary," I started, but my voice faltered. What could I even say? That he was wrong? That it meant nothing? That it was a mistake? Maybe it was, but it didn't feel like one. And that was the problem. "This can't happen again," I said finally, forcing the words out. They're not supposed to, he replied quietly. I frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means… He paused, choosing his words carefully. We're at a point where we decide what this becomes, or whether it ends here. That hit harder than anything else, because he was right. This wasn't about what had already happened. It was about what we were going to do next. I walked toward the window again, needing space to think. City lights flickered outside, distant and indifferent. Logan, I whispered. Just saying his name filled me with guilt again. He trusted me, even if he had been distant, even if he had neglected me emotionally. That didn't justify crossing a line that should never have been touched. I never meant for any of this to happen, I said, more to myself than to Gary. I know, he replied, and that's exactly why it matters. I turned back to him. What do you mean? If it was just something careless, something meaningless, it would have been easy to forget, he said. But it wasn't. His voice was steady now, certain, and that's why it's complicated. I felt my chest tighten, because he was putting into words everything I had been trying to avoid. Complicated doesn't mean right, I said firmly. No, he agreed. It doesn't. Another pause. Then he added, but ignoring it doesn't make it disappear either. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of the situation pressed down on both sides. I'm scared, I admitted suddenly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Gary's expression softened. Of what? Of what this says about me, I said. About us. About everything. He took a step closer, but still kept a respectful distance. It says you're human, he replied. I shook my head. It says I made a choice I shouldn't have made. That's true, he said. I looked up, surprised by his honesty. But one mistake doesn't define who you are, he continued. What defines you is what you do after. That stayed with me, echoing in my mind. I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment everything came down to. We can't continue this, I said clearly. This time, there was no hesitation in my voice. No more blurred lines, no more confusion. Gary didn't interrupt. He just listened. I care about Logan, I added. And regardless of everything, I won't betray that again. The word again hung in the air. Painful. Honest. Gary nodded slowly. I understand. And for the first time since he walked in, there was no tension in his voice, just acceptance. It doesn't mean I don't feel anything, he said quietly. I know, I replied, because I didn't want to lie anymore. Not to him, not to myself. But some feelings, I continued, aren't meant to be acted on. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different, lighter, like something had finally settled. Gary took a step back, then another. I guess this is where we draw the line, he said. Yes, I answered. He walked toward the door, stopping just before opening it. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, I don't regret feeling what I felt. I didn't respond right away, because part of me felt the same. I just wish things were different, he added softly. Then he opened the door and left. The room was quiet again, but not empty, not anymore. I sat down slowly, letting everything sink in, the confusion, the tension, the choices. That night didn't define me, but the decision I made afterward did. The next morning, everything felt clearer, not easier, but clearer. When I saw Gary again, things were different. Not awkward, not distant, just understood. There was a quiet agreement between us. No words needed. And Logan? When I looked at him, I realized something important. Relationships don't break in a single moment. They fade slowly, through distance, neglect, and silence. But they can also be rebuilt, if both people choose to try. That journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it. Life is full of unexpected moments. Some test your strength, others test your values. That night tested both. And in the end, it wasn't about what happened. It was about the choice I made after.